With training camp quickly approaching for the Chicago Bears, there are tons of questions that the Bears are hoping to find some answers for in training camp. And on today's episode, I want to talk about some of the position groups that we have the most questions on and how people can step in and help answer those questions without the Bears going out and needing to sign any other veterans to help shore up those areas. We're also going to talk about Ngakoue as this continue to be rumored that he could be returning to the Chicago Bears and dive a little bit into the mailbag. All that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bears Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bears news and content.
What's going on, Bears fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bears Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bears related. I'm the host, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Chi Bears Central on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today. And so we want to talk about some of the biggest questions for the Bears heading into training camp. This is where we're really looking at players to really step up and kind of answer some questions at positions for the Chicago Bears. And we're going to start off in one of the biggest questions. One of my biggest concerns for the Chicago Bears team this season is the offensive line. While we've added some very talented, versatile offensive linemen this year, one of the questions is Ngakoue. How much is he going to step up and be able to be an actual weapon and utilize for the Chicago Bears? But outside of that, we have questions at two positions specifically. That's the center, and that's the right guard position. The center position, we know that we brought in Coleman Shelton and Ryan Bates to help compete for that. It seems like Coleman Shelton may have the inside edge on that, or Ryan Bates may, of course, be a backup center, but also may end up starting at right guard, which brings about, we have one of the biggest questions there. Nate Davis, regardless of where you think he can be, the fact of the matter is he hasn't been that for the Chicago Bears as of yet. And while we still hear things about uncertainty of his readiness, health, and other things, it's still a big question there. Now, I said and started this show off with this episode off by saying we can find answers internally for these. And it just comes down to, can Coleman Shelton bring enough confidence for the Chicago Bears, and Ryan Bates bring enough confidence at that position? And then Nate Davis, if he can just come into practice in the training camp, be exactly who we need him to be. And again, that's somebody who was a solid enough guard, a good enough guard. Let me just say a good enough guard where the Bears felt confident giving him a fully guaranteed deal. So we need those two players to really step up so the Bears can look at using assets where the Bears do have $21 million left in cap space. We want that to be allocated in places that it needs to be rather than having two veterans that don't necessarily live up. We've already improved the center position. I've talked a lot about it when we got Ryan Bates, when we got Coleman Shelton. We've at least brought our center position up from a place of weakness to a place, hopefully, of competency. And that is a large step for the Chicago Bears, considering where we have been. But when you look at it, the Bears, that's the two biggest question marks on that offensive line for me, with Braxton Jones, of course, a little bit behind that. But Braxton Jones has shown himself to be a solid enough starter for me. If you have quality play elsewhere, I think we'll be okay there. Tevin Jenkins, Darnell Wright, those are two guys that when they're on the field, you don't doubt. Now, that's more for Tevin Jenkins than Darnell Wright. And so I think that this offensive line can overall perform much better than what we've seen the last couple of years. But for an offensive line that over the last two seasons has given up well over 110 sacks, it brings some cause for concern there when you break it all down. And so that offensive line is just something that until I see in games, it's always going to be high up on any list of concerns or things that can go wrong for the team. And I know not everybody shares that. Matter of fact, the voicemail that we have today actually goes into from Booker that he feels pretty confident about that offensive line. So we'll get to that when time comes. But everywhere else on that offensive line, we seem pretty set at, again, that's not considering health. But it comes down to, can Nate Davis play? And can he stay on the field long enough? And can he perform well enough? And again, I know he had the real life situation going on. I'm not holding that against him. But other than that, he had some health things too. Like, we just need Nate Davis to come in, be healthy, play. And I feel like if he can stay on the football field, he's going to give us enough at that position to where we're not looking at it and saying this is holding the Bears back. And then he could probably be even better than that, right? I don't want to cap it at just saying, let's just be competent there at right guard. He can do more than that. But I tell you what, there are some players there that are ready to step in and maybe even take some positions and move over. And Ryan Bates is one that could very well move over to that right guard position and leave Coleman Shelton there at center if need be. And so that is something that the Bears have to look at. They have to review. And overall, I hope that we do find those answers internally. I hope that it comes down to Nate Davis coming into training camp and just being everything that we hope that he could be, and that question going away. And so if that's the thing that happens, we'll be fine there. But if we have to kind of start turning things around, whether it means bringing Ryan Bates into the right guard or moving Tevin Jenkins back to the right side and Bates over to the left guard next to Braxton Jones, that just gets to a place where we're moving players around again, where we want a season at least of some continuity with being able to keep Tevin Jenkins at the same position for once, things like that. So overall, those two positions are really big question marks for me for the Bears next year, and that's one that we definitely can find the answer to within this team. At least that's my hope. And if we do, that can help the Bears go off into a different stratosphere. Next up is the overall defensive line. Hearing that we talked about yesterday on the group with me, Bobby, and C-Double, it's good to have all three of us back again on an episode as well. But, talking about the defensive tackle position and how it's been, reported that Keith Randolph has been turning some heads and may even pass up Zach Pickens. And I think that that's what it comes down to as well. We know that we have an anchor in Montez Sweat on that defensive line. And we know that we have a solid veteran in Andrew Billings as well. But everything else is a question mark. And we can find those answers within. Can Gervon Dexter bring enough and excel enough and raise his and take a big enough step to where that 3-tech position is something now that we look at as we don't have to worry about. And then who backs him up? Zach Pickens, Keith Randolph. I, for one, am glad that we're going into training camp with kind of that battle there, because let the best man win. And Keith Randolph being an undrafted rookie who the Bears did give, I think, a full deal to, it's good to have him come in and already be people saying, hey, he may be the backup here. And long term, you want that flexibility. And so, having that, being able to throw multiple looks, we already talked about many times how Eric Washington is going to be very versatile in the lineups. He's going to switch people in and out to keep people fresh. So all these guys have an opportunity to show a lot, especially in preseason, and what they can bring and let the best man win. And then, of course, that defensive end position, right? Can DeMarcus Walker be enough there on that opposite defensive end at 3.5 sacks last season? Can he bring enough of that to where the Bears don't feel like they have to go in and sign another edge or something like that, right? So, DeMarcus Walker, Austin Booker, who is still a player that a lot of people think fell way too far and can be much better than what we've shown. And, seeing his tape, seeing his measurables, there's more than enough reason to believe that. So, looking at that, can DeMarcus Walker, Austin Booker, Gervon Dexter, and then whatever happens with the rest of the defensive tackles there, is that going to be enough on that defensive line to where the Bears are going to get enough pressure on QBs so that we can kind of start off the season where we finished it last year? Or will it be that the coaching staff and looks at this and says, no, we need a little bit more. Let's go out and get a unique Ngakoue, who, like I said, we got its own topic that we'll talk about here in a second. But so that's, of course, questions around the Chicago Bears. But that defensive line, really how solid to good that defensive line is going to be, and how much having Montez Sweat at the start in training camp really helps us start off in a much better place than where we started off last season. Can we get closer? How much of that progression that we saw from the defensive line to end last season, how much of that is going to be sustainable at the start of this year? If we can start off our year close to that and finish close to it again and play at that level for the majority of the season, that's a defense that can be a top 10 defense in the NFL when you pair that with what we've seen from our linebacking core, what we see, and the growth that we still hope to see from our secondary as well. So the defensive line is a big question, and that's one that everybody's going to talk about with the Bears, is can the Bears get enough pressure? And so DeMarcus Walker, Austin Booker, Gervon Dexter, Zach Pickens, Keith Randolph, tons of question on if they can fill enough there, if the Bears feel like they need a little bit more, and then go out and get that veteran edge. And then the running back too. Another topic that we touched on heavily in yesterday's episode with all three of us is that regardless of, it's not even a question about who's better. It's a question about who is going to be the needed one there. We know what DeAndre Swift brings. He's penciled in to be the starter. Doesn't seem to be too many questions on if DeAndre Swift is going to be the starting running back. The next question is that how much has Roschon Johnson increased from last year? Already probably the best pass blocking back that we have there. Offers a different skill set to Swift. A bruiser. He needs to not make sure that he's not getting as many concussions, be a little bit more finesse in that, but also how it can be used in the passing game, how he does receive passes out the backfield and can be used in that. I, for one, have said for a long time, once we got Roschon Johnson, even before Swift came here, I would like to see some sweats where we use DeAndre Swift and Roschon at that fullback, right? With Swift being at the halfback, or even Khalil and Roschon. Put Roschon in there as some fullback snaps with his pass blocking ability and see what we can get there. But that running back too, who is going to be that And I don't know if we get that answer in training camp, and that may be fluid depending on the matchups that we face. But we saw Roschon last year increase in snaps played, and eventually he started playing more snaps than even Khalil Herbert last year. Now we know that Khalil had injury concerns and things like that over the course of the season, but that running back 2 battle is one that I don't think that we talk enough about, that, but that is there. Is that who's going to be that running back 2 on that depth chart? And there's things outside of just football. I would understand anybody who says, well, Haize, Khalil Herbert is a better running back right now than Roschon than what we've seen. And if that's your argument, I'm not necessarily saying that, but if that's your argument, I completely understand that. But you also have to factor in the future. And if the Bears know or don't expect or don't think that they're going to be giving Khalil Herbert a contract extension, or if they plan to maybe move him at some point this season, C-Dub had a kind of a hot take in saying that maybe the Bears look to cut him. He does only have a cap hit of $30,000, but I think he's too good to just cut. I think at the end of the day, you're going to try to explore some trade value for him if you look to move on from him. But that is a part in all this, as well as that maybe they, regardless if they feel like Khalil's a little bit better right now, that they want to give Roschon those chances to exceed and to develop, because they may look at him as being a more longer-term player here for the Chicago Bears than what Khalil Herbert's going to be. So that running back 2 position is one that I'm going to be watching a lot as well as the kick returners, punt returners, things like that we're going to look at. But those are kind of the 3 position groups the most that I think we could have the answers in this roster. Well, for most of those, I think we do have those answers within the roster. It's just who steps up the most to answer those questions and eliminate them being a question as we go to the regular season. Now, one of the positions that I talked about was the edge position, one that's going to be talked about a lot in this offseason from the Chicago Bears. And we had Matt Holder of Bleacher Report said this when it came down to it as far as the edge position and Yannick Ngakoue, saying, granted, Yannick Ngakoue is coming off a career-low 4 sacks in Chicago last season. That's partially because he suffered an ankle injury that limited him to just 13 games. Also, Ngakoue was productive during his limited time playing with Sweat, bringing down the quarterback twice in 5 contests, while the later commanded the offense's attention. So it might be worth seeing what the pairing can do with a full season together, especially since the Bears don't need the 9-year veteran to be an every down defender, with DeMarcus Walker serving as the starting defensive end. Currently, Chicago has over $21.5 million in cap space per over the cap to bring the sack artist back to the Windy City before the season gets underway. This is a conversation that, all of us in the Bears content creator community have talked about at some point or another, is the potential of bringing Yannick Ngakoue back to the Chicago Bears. And it makes sense for a few different reasons. A, for what Matt Holder said, is just the fact that bringing him back as somebody who's familiar with their system, that did have some success when he played with Montez Sweat, very small sample size, but he's also looking to prove it. He knows he's coming off a major injury, and because of that, he's probably not going to command the $10 million that he commanded last year. And then as well as the Bears bringing in somebody for depth that was a former starter for them, while you still have Austin Booker who's developing, DeMarcus Walker who can be very versatile, used on the inside and the outside of that defensive line. So it may be a situation where it just makes the most sense for both parties to reconnect for 1 year and to get it done. Yannick can revamp some of his value before going back out in free agency the following season. Or you never know. Maybe he ends up turning into somebody who does stay here and plays that veteran role while Austin Booker ascends or whatever else happens, right? So there's a lot of things that make sense both football-wise and both, outside of football as far as just the business aspect on why bringing Yannick Ngakoue back could be the most sensible thing for the Chicago Bears. Overall, I think that the Bears are not going to make that decision before a week or two in the training camp. I think we may make it through the first preseason game before the Bears really feel like they got it. And I think that's around the same time they did it last year as well, before they brought Yannick in, is make that decision and then decide on, do they feel they need to spend money on a veteran edge, whether it be for a depth piece, somebody who can come in and contend for a starting position. But it's going to come down to, as I said in the last one, how well do they feel about DeMarcus Walker, Austin Booker, and the rest of the depth on that? Because I tell you what, even if the Bears look at DeMarcus Walker and Austin Booker and say, they're cool, right? But Javon Dexter is bringing it, and they feel extremely confident on that pressure he's going to be able to bring from that interior, they may go with that and not and wait or just decide to hold off on spending money on a veteran edge. But I do think there is some potential there. I think we hear enough of it. Haven't really heard too many teams circling around Yannick Ngakoue, and that could very well be because his agent and him feel confident that they can go back to the Chicago Bears once they, some other things happen. So we'll see what happens there. I'm, for one, I'm not necessarily against it. It's a practical decision when it comes down to it. And that sometimes that's just what you need to make is practical decisions. Everything isn't going to be a home run, and it doesn't need to be. But bringing back Ngakoue to the Chicago Bears is just a decision that seems to make sense on paper, regardless, and it can make more sense depending on how confident these Bears coaches are and what production they're going to get from that defensive line. And we'll end up seeing. But let me know what you guys think down below. Do you think bringing in Ngakoue is the right move for the Chicago Bears based off what you know and seen so far, which is very little? And do you agree that the Bears should wait, go through the first part of training camp, go through that first preseason game, and then at that point, things still seem to be a question mark? Go ahead and bring in Ngakoue. And honestly, I'll say this as well. Dominique Robinson does have a place in this as well. If he has extended his game at all and developed and picked up on what we've seen, maybe the Bears feel a little bit more confident there. That's a tall order because Dominique Robinson hasn't really shown a whole hell of a lot. So let me know what you guys think on that down below. But before we go, we do got one voicemail that we want to play. This one's from Booker.
Yo, Bobby, this book, man. Blessings to you and yours, and I hope y'all fourth was safe, man, and you got a chance to enjoy it with the family. Man, I got to tell you, man, I got to talk about this O-line. I think the O-line is being severely underrated. I think the O-line is actually going to be pretty good. I think with the addition of the two centers, which is already an upgrade and already an overhaul for this line, because we have two centers now that can actually snap the ball. That's already a win. Now, with Nate Davis is a good player. I know he had the situation last year, and the situation was going on. I don't know about with the practicing and everything, but I'm gonna tell you like this, man. When training camp open, man, if he not there or he not practicing, man, I'm done. This will be the last time you ever hear me say Fam's name. If he not practicing day one, I'm done with him. And I think if that's the case, I think they should move Shelton, have Shelton start at center, move Tev back to right, and put Bates at left if he can play. I'm not sure if he can play left guard, but if he can't, then move him to right guard. But I think this O-line, man, is going to be better than what people think, man. And I think people, man, are giving Brax a little bit of a too hard of a time, man. The man has improved every year. You know what I'm saying? He ain't garbage. You know what I'm saying? The man can play. Just let's see what he can do this third year, man. Now, I'm always for adding additional players, man, because you can never have enough O-linemen. You know what I'm saying? So if they find somebody that can help shore this line up in case some injuries happen, I'm all for it. But I think this Bears team, man, is going to be very, very fun to watch. And for the first time ever that I can think of, it's going to be fun to watch offensively. But that's all I wanted to say, man. Chicago up, Bear down. And again, blessings to you and yours, and I'll holler.
O-line being better than expected. And here's the thing. If I had to put a percentage on it, what percentage would I give that the O-line could be better than what everybody's expecting? I'll probably say 45%. And the reason why it's that is because health still plays a thing. Even if Nate Davis comes back to practice, is back locked in, you still got to worry about Tevin Jenkins. Is he going to stay healthy? You got to worry about this overall offensive line. As the offensive linemen do get banged up easily, right? But one thing that the Bears have done in this is that they have brought in versatile offensive linemen that can play multiple positions. Almost everybody that they signed for an offensive line player has been somebody that can play multiple positions. But Bakhtiari, who we talked about before as the tackle, former Green Bay, could come in and help shore that up without spending a whole lot of money. Connor Williams is still out there if the Bears do decide to do something also. So, we'll see. And I get what you're saying as far as increasing the center position. But as I said in kind of that first segment, one of the questions that remain there is, will Orion Bates have to play guard because of not being confident in Nate Davis, which then weakens some things. So, we'll see. The one thing that I do disagree with is you said Braxton Jones has gotten better every season. I don't think that. I'm not to say he's hasn't maybe improved somewhat, but I do think he's primarily the same player he was when he came in as a rookie, and that's why people are looking at it. I've always disagreed with people acting like he's terrible. Braxton isn't a terrible offensive lineman at all, but he just has an increase, and he has a lot of the same weaknesses, and you want to see more development by a player going into their third year. And maybe he does show that this year. He very well could with other veterans on that offensive line, maybe actually Nate Davis starting off the season healthy. Those things can help, right? So I don't want to overlook and say that Braxton can't still progress, but this is the time where he has to do it. The fact that the Bears haven't brought in anybody that really competes with him to take his starting position, shows at least that the Bears are also confident in it. So regardless of how I feel or anything, I think the Bears are telling us that they do have some level of confidence in Braxton Jones. It's just that he does need to progress. He needs to handle that bull rush better. He needs to do those things better. And if he does, the penalties as well, which I went over in a different episode, how Braxton Jones definitely hurt us with penalties. If he can increase in those areas, then yeah, he could be a solid starting lineman for years to come. But I just disagree that he's really progressed. Not terrible, not great, but he's good. The question is, can he be good enough, especially with how the other pieces on that offensive line are going to work? And it's up to him to answer that. And I'm not going to count him out until I see it. And, we'll see what happens there, Booker. But great voicemail, Book. Thank you for leaving that. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you guys are following the show at Shy Bears Central. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. ChicagoBearsCentral@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-242-9336. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bears related. That's thanks to you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, Chi-Town up, but Bear down. Love you guys. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.